In this lesson, we'll take a look at some of the most classic openings that were played throughout the history of Go. And when I say classic, we have to go no further than the opening that was made popular and named after Honinbo Shusaku. That same Honinbo Shusaku who played the ear reddening move. And at that time, the only move that was possible to play in the corner was the 3-4. So if you wanted to play something like this, for example, your teacher probably wouldn't have let you do that. So that opening goes like this. Black takes 3-4, another 3-4, the same thing here, and instead of taking this corner, white approaches. Black takes the last remaining corner, white approaches once again, and if you've seen the anime Hikaru no Go, then you're definitely familiar with the next move.
16の5
This is Shusaku's signature diagonal move, or kosumi. This move looks deceptively innocent, but even modern computers agree that it's quite strong, and it's possible to play this move not just in this opening, but every time you have a 3-4 stone and your opponent approaches. It has a lot of deep ideas behind it. Let's take a look. If white doesn't respond right now, but let's say encloses the corner, black can keep on attacking the stone, press it down, and white will be forced to crawl on the third line. Or black could even attack more severely and pincer like this, or like this. And now white doesn't have a base, white will be forced to escape and live somewhere. And black will gain some profit. And if white responds and saves the stone, now black can start looking on this side. And black again has a multifunctional move at his disposal. Black can extend from these stones and attack this one at the same time. So playing something like this is possible. It's a pincer and an extension. And this is what Shusaku's opening looks like. But of course, if you want to try it in your games, you can't really expect that white is going to approach here instead of taking the corner. So let's say that in your game, white takes the corner instead. And if you want to play a traditional opening like this one, then you can simply enclose the corner right now and see what white does next. But Honinbo Shusaku lived in the 19th century, so all of that was the golden age of Japanese Go. Along came the 20th century, and things changed a lot. Two of the strongest friends and rivals, and simply the strongest players of the 20th century, Kitani Minoru and Go Seigen, played a lot of games against each other. They talked and they talked about the openings, and they came up with what we now call the new openings. They played moves that we had never seen before. Can you believe it? They played 4-4. The moves that they played in their games are really not for the faint of heart. It really looks like someone just scattered some stones around the board and then a huge fight started. And the climax of these new developments in the opening came in the game between Go Seigen and Honinbo Shusaku. Not to be confused with Honinbo Shusaku, they came from the same school, they represented the same school of Honinbo, so they had this Honinbo in front of their names. Honinbo Shusaku represented the classic school of openings, and Go Seigen tried to fight him with the new openings of his own. And so their game looked like this. With the first move, Go Seigen took 3-3, something nobody has seen before. White, of course, responded with a 3-4 in classic style. The next move, 4-4, unheard of. Another 3-4, and the next move from Go Seigen, right here in the center. All of the first three moves as unconventional as they possibly could be. Now it might seem a little surprising. How could they make their openings so radically different from what had been played before? Does it mean that they couldn't play classical openings? Of course they could, but they wanted to find something new and potentially something better than that. But what's even more interesting is that this kind of 180-degree turn from the old to the new developments is not really unique to the game of Go. It happens almost in every form of art that we have. Let's say classical music. When I say classical music, you probably imagine someone like Mozart or Beethoven. And Beethoven, by the way, lived around the same time as Honinbo Shusaku. The music that he created in all of its magnificence sounds exactly like you would imagine classical music is supposed to sound like. And in the 20th century, there was an Austrian composer named Arnold Schoenberg, who wasn't really happy with the old school of composing either. So he tried experiments of his own with atonal music. And if you've never listened to his music, it might sound alien and bizarre. In the words of philosophers, that was the thesis as the old and the antithesis as the new. And now, inevitably, there has to be a synthesis, a combination of the two, a new, remodernized version of music. And it came. There's a plethora of wonderfully talented 20th century composers who tried to combine the elements of the old and the new. Let's take the music of someone like Sergei Prokofiev, for example. It has all the splendor of traditional classical music, but if you listen closely, you will hear the influence of Arnold Schoenberg as well. So what about the game of Go? What came as a synthesis of the old traditional openings and the modern 20th century experiments? Let's find out. Our next opening is actually the one we've seen before, the Kobayashi opening. It was invented by one of the strongest players of the second half of the 20th century, Kobayashi Koichi. And you see how everything is connected here. Kitani Minoru, one of the creators of the new openings, had a very famous Go school in Japan, the Kitani Dojo. And Kobayashi Koichi, and it now comes as no surprise, was a student there. So the opening that he created looks like this. Black takes a star point, 4-4. And now 3-4. Black approaches. White defends the corner. And do you remember where black plays next? Right now, black defends the bottom side. And we've seen before that invading here, it's possible for white, but it's really not urgent. At this point, the most interesting place on the board is this corner. If it was black's turn right now, black really wants to enclose it. But of course, it's white's turn, so white needs to approach. And at that time, it was believed that approaching this corner too closely is a little disadvantageous or even slightly dangerous for white. So playing something like this was considered not very desirable, even though today computers say that this is actually the best move. It was believed that black would pincer, and now white would have to escape, and black gets all the territory at the bottom. So the suggested variation at that time was that white approaches and keeps some distance between the stone and the corner. Now, of course, black could still pincer, but in this case, now white has a lot more space to live here. So black would probably keep the corner, and that's only one of the variations. Now white wants to extend from the stone, and white could really extend almost anywhere. But if white wants safety, then the safest way of development here from one stone is to make a two-space extension. So white would play here, black would immediately attack. Now these stones still don't feel very safe yet, so white would add another move just to be on the safe side. Black would play this probing move to threaten to cut. White defends. This move could come in handy in the future, and black defends the bottom. And this is a basic formation of the Kobayashi opening. Now naturally this is only one variation out of many, and the point of this lesson is not to show you all of the possible sequences in the opening, but to show you one basic pattern in case you're wondering which openings you can try in your games. But you need to remember that once you place the first few moves of the opening on the board, you need to start playing creatively and come up with your own ideas. The next opening first appeared around 1950s or 60s. In the match between China and Japan, the Chinese players used one particular opening that everyone found quite surprising. In fact, everyone liked it so much that it became one of the most popular openings of the 20th century. And it became known as the Chinese opening. And it goes like this. Once again, just like in the Kobayashi opening, black takes a start point, and the 3-4. But now instead of approaching this corner, black plays here. This specific point. Now, what is the reason behind this move? Why not play somewhere like this in the middle? Why here? And there's a very interesting reasoning behind this move. Let me show you. Right now, white has a lot of options. White can, for example, enclose any of these corners. White can approach black's corner. But this move wants to make sure that white doesn't want to approach black from the right side, from the inside. Because if white wants to play somewhere here, which seems reasonable, but now black will kick, like this, attacking white, and this is a very common modern joseki as well. So it's very nice to remember this variation. Now white needs to extend, because if white doesn't, black will immediately play here, and this stone gets damaged severely. So white responds. Now black defends the corner like this, and white needs to extend. If you remember, when we have one stone, we make a 2-space extension. But when we have 2 stones, we make a 3-space extension. And this is exactly what white wants to do here. 2 stones. White wants to play here. That would be perfect. But unfortunately, this black stone prevents white from doing this. So white can only extend here, a 2-space extension. And that feels a little dissatisfying for white. White doesn't feel very happy here. So let's see what happens if white invades here instead. Now the same thing happens. So what was played before, typically black would just take the bottom. And now white doesn't have a lot of space here for development. White would, for example, attach like this, trying to live here. Black responds from the corner. White pulls back. Now black defends the corner and prepares to attack white. And now white really wants to extend somewhere. Well, as far as he can actually. White wants to play here, or maybe even here. But unfortunately that's impossible. There's a black stone here. So the farthest white can go is this. And once again, white is not really happy here. This white group is barely alive, which means that in the future, black can bully this group more and gain some profit. And that is the hidden meaning behind this black stone. It makes these invasions onto the side less desirable for white. In fact, these invasions onto the right side were considered so undesirable that white even tried to approach this corner like this, for example, which is approaching the corner from the wrong side, remember? White is supposed to approach from here, but white does it from here, but in this case, at least, nobody's limiting white's extensions. So when black naturally takes the corner, white can now extend as far as he wants. White plays here and feels just fine. And actually, this opening is incredibly flexible, so you don't have to limit yourself to one particular invasion or one extension here, but you can try and experiment. This opening was played for so many years by amateurs and professionals alike. I loved it myself, and if you're really not sure about which opening you can try at the very start, I suggest that you try this one, because it offers a very nice foundation for your creativity. And the last opening that we'll see in this lesson was made popular by a Japanese player named Takemiya Masaki. He was a fan of huge territorial frameworks, so at the start of the game he didn't care about territory too much, but instead he played for influence. He played for huge frameworks and moyos, and then he forced his opponents to invade there and tried to kill them. And that makes the games played with this opening fun to play and also fun to watch. His opening is called San-ren-sei, which means 3 stars in a row, and it goes like this. Black takes 1 4-4, and then another 4-4. Oh, by the way, try and guess which move black plays next. And of course, if it's 3 stars in a row, black takes another star point. Black plays here. And you see, all the corners are completely open, so white can invade here, and black doesn't really care about that. So a game with this opening might continue like this, for example. White approaches the corner. Black pincers. Now white wants to take it, so white jumps into the corner. And at this point, a logical response seems to be to separate these stones. We can now attack this one and this one, but in this case white will live in the corner and this framework will be destroyed. It's gone. So black here doesn't separate the stones. Black blocks from this side. White gets connected. Now white plays this. That was the joseki at that time. And black plays a beautiful double knight move, connecting his stones and building the wall. Now white is alive, and it's now white's turn, so white could approach this corner as well, and the same sequence could occur. Black attacks again, white takes the corner. Now white lives, and black gets another wall. It is now white's turn, and if white doesn't do anything about it, if white just protects the corner, for example, black could add another stone, and now this looks very big. So white probably needs to invade, but how? If white invades very deep, something like this, black will definitely cover, and now this stone will have to escape, and it's not going to be easy. Now, if we remember the principle that our opponent's best move is very often our best move as well, this move that black wants to play is also a very good point for white, because this is the borderline of this potential Moyo framework. And it's right on the borderline that you want to play in this case. So white could play, for example, something like this. This stone is not really inside black's framework yet, so if black still wants to cover it like this, white has so many ways of escaping, like this, or maybe like this. So if black wants to keep the territory like this, but now the borderline that was here has now moved to this line, which makes black's territory significantly smaller. And if you keep in mind that white can later reduce this territory by playing here, and also doing the same thing here, then after this, white is not really afraid of black's framework that much. And that is the main idea behind the San-ren-sei opening. Black is trying to forget about his desire to take territory, and he gives up some territory to white, and he takes a huge framework instead and tries to turn it into territory later. And white needs to watch very closely, and when the framework gets big enough, white needs to invade or reduce at the right time to not let this framework get too big. So these are the outlines of a few basic openings in Go, but not too many openings and not too many variations in them. One great Go teacher recommended to his students that they shouldn't really try and play all the different openings all at once. Instead, he suggested that they pick one opening that feels fine to them and then play it over and over again in different games. Try all sorts of different variations, but all within the same one opening, until it becomes second nature to play in this opening. And finally, after they've practiced enough, they can move on and play all the openings they want. Playing the same opening in every game allows your brain to stop worrying about which opening moves you're going to play. And it lets you think about more important things, like middle game fighting and shapes of your stones. And I want to give you the same advice here. Pick one of these openings, maybe one of these four or some other one, and keep playing the same opening in every game until it becomes natural and familiar. And once you're really comfortable with the shapes that occur, it'll be easier for you to move on to something else. By the way, you can also watch these lessons on our platform, gomagic.org. Except there, you'll watch them with interactive quizzes right within the lessons and practical exercises right after them. And if you enjoy watching these Go videos and you don't want to miss others like this one, go smash that like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and this is Go Magic.